Nimis and Kinetic Blast is one of the most amazing interactions we've gotten in a while, if not the most amazing interaction. And I'm really big fan of it. I had a lot of fun so far, and I'm finally able to share that. Build is really amazing. Hey, I'm Cyclone. And for those who are just interested in quickly grab the PoB, just give me 30 seconds of your time. There is some information for this PoB that is important. Alright, very quickly. The PoB contains four passive trees, 3 gem setups, and 3 build setups. The passive tree starting at level 72 and going all the way to level 100. It is recommended that you swap to this build, that you don't level as this build. I cannot recommend that, so I didn't include a tree for that. You can either go with a leveling build like Hollow Palm or Rain of Arrows, or you could go, if you need to go from the beginning, maybe take a look at my Toxic Rain Caustic Arrow Raider guide. Alright, for the gem setup, there is an early version, there is a Nimis version for Trinity, and there is a Nimis version for Pure Lightning. The Trinity variant is better, I will get to that later in this video as to why. Lastly, for the gear section, it starts as low investment and goes to high investment. However, the low investment is in relation to the build and other Nimis Kinetic Blast builds. This version starts for about roughly 15 to 20 divines, with getting a really decent int-stacking start as a classical int-stacker. Then goes to mid-investment, grabs the Nimis, so including Nimis and other upgrades, we're looking then at roughly 60, maybe 50 divines investment into the build. And then in a high investment, it will require a Mage Blood to get its resistance sorted out while keeping the gains we grant from the high investment version, and then use some other upgrades which get it excluding Mage Blood, with including then all the upgrades we did before, at about roughly 80, maybe 70 to 80 divines in investment. Alright, now for those who just want the PoB, go ahead, have a wonderful day. For the rest of you, I have a lot more information to share. Alright. Rest of the build, int-stacking variant of Nimis Kinetic Blast. I'm a very big fan of this variant. I've taken a look at, a bit of a look at the Cast and Crit variant, which looks amazing, but I'm not the biggest fan of Cast and Crit, and I'm not the best player of it, so I wasn't able to fully judge it in terms of budget and other things. But in terms of the Omni variant, I've looked into it more deeply, and it is really amazing. It has absorbed damage, even for still pinnacle bosses, uber pinnacle bosses, is really powerful, but it has a very hefty price tag just to get started. The int-stacking variant in comparison is surprisingly cheap to get going. Like, okay, 20 divines isn't cheap, but in terms of an endgame build, a build you invest into that is really amazing in several categories, including bossing, clear, and survivability, it isn't that easy to get going for a low investment. So I think 20 divines to get the start as a classic int-stacker is really good, and once you get Nimis, you can immediately swap to the kinetic variant and have a lot of fun with this. If I need to put numbers on this, I would do the following. In terms of single target, I would say, like, single target in a map, a unique, for example, Legion General or map boss, it's a 9 out of 10. It kills them very quickly, but it doesn't one-shot like a bosser would do. In terms of bossing, I would say an 8 out of 10. It is very quickly, very good damage, but as it is melee and as it is mainly a mapping variant, because we don't have all the crazy penetration from all elemental penetration from Omni, it's only 8 out of 10. It kills the bosses fairly quickly, but doesn't insta-kill again. But for clear, this is a 10. At least as far as clear goes at the moment, being on the same level, in my opinion, as Explosion, Blade Vortex build, for example, the Aureus Ant version of Grimrow, or a min-max Tornado Shot. It is really good and clear. It can off-screen, and it can clear on the screen. It's just really good. And now we get to survivability. And in terms of the investment into survivability, like currency invested into survivability, this is supreme in this. It is really, really good in terms of survivability. We have Molten Shell, Grace, Determination, Defiance Banner, a good amount of Aura effect. We have, We have avoidance cap, spill suppression cap, ES on hit, ES leech, and we have ghost dance. This build, if you don't intend it to die, it can tank quite a bit. Now, I haven't tested something like a Maven Memory Game Explosion or Shaper Slam, and I did die to a bad positioning against a Wave 30 Kosis, and I did die in standing in explosions in a map, so it isn't immortal by any means. But it is very tanky if you play a bit carefully. I was all the way to 50% experience, and then I decided I want to do conditional uber bosses now. I lost my 50% experience very quickly. Here. Pushing Pinnacle purchase. I did the Shaper 15 unlimited volatiles. I did the Eater of World. I did the Maven. I did the Cortex. And I did the Searing X. So it is doable on this. But anyway. Overall, a really solid build. Good damage. Really amazing clear. Good survivability. And a decent budget. Now we get to the actual build part. As far as the Pantheon goes, we want to have early on a Soul of the Brine King. We want to keep the Soul of the Brine King with the freeze immunity and the reduced chill effectiveness until the elemental void cap, which also will get us 50% chance to avoid being stunned. Once we have that, we can swap to Soul of Lunaris to get that physical damage reduction, which is always a nice thing to have. And then we want Soul of Aberrath with the Vessel, of course, so we don't care about Burning Ground. And then we want to kill all the bandits because we are passive point starvy. As far as the Ascendency goes, let me actually switch to passive building for this. Now, I've been testing a lot of this build. I think the tree is as min-max as it goes. And the Deadeye Ascendency is so good. Let me just show you a few numbers, which is why we are now in passive building. Farshot, 37% damage. Endless munition. Now, we don't have a number here, but I can show you how it works with the number. If we take a look at this full DPS here, it's currently at 19.2. If we remove 2 projectiles, we go down to 14. 1 projectile, 17. So we have roughly 2 million damage per projectile. And this is just assuming the base amount of projectiles. If we add Fork to this, if we add potential inspired learning stacks with additional projectiles to this, if we add Sniper's Mark to this, there are a lot more projectiles. But this is just as a baseline 20 million, which is really good. Now, Gathering Wind, 16% DPS because of all those attacks. And we also have movement speed with this. And we have attack speed for shield charge with this. It's just really good. And lastly, Focal Point. 70% points of damage, but again, this is just considering the base mark. Also, we have 75% increased effect of mark, which means more projectiles. And the way Nimis works with Sniper's Mark, as far as I've seen, as far as I've heard, as far as I've tested, is the following. You are here, the enemy is here, you fire a projectile. The projectile hits the enemy, but the enemy also has Sniper's Mark on it, so the projectiles go out from the enemy and then go back to the enemy. If the enemy dies, they go out from the enemy and go back to you. This means that if the enemy is random around the map, we are just cursing with Sniper's Mark on hit. We don't even need to stand on top of him for him to die to all the projectile shotgunning. But if he's on top of us, we are just creating a bullet hell for the enemies. There are so many explosions, it feels so satisfying. This is just really good. Now, to compare with this, people could say, why not go Ascendant? We have 15% damage on Berserker, 30% on Inquisitor, also 12% on Trickster, 9% on Deadeye. Occultists could give us elemental weakness on hit. I have reasons against all of this. I've tested this. Here's my test. If we look at the test, the number here looks the same, but you see, it's a test, right? But we also need to reduce this by 1, and suddenly we add less damage. And this tree includes 500 crit multi, which is something that we don't have on our variant by using the trick here. Oh, I didn't want to compare. This like, I try to make Scion work, but the quality of damage and the quality of life we get from Deadeye is just unbeatable. It is just that good for this build. I cannot recommend going Scion for this raid. If you're a classical int-stacker, Scion is going to beat this because the interaction of Power Siphon and all the damage. But for this, Deadeye, definitely. No way I'm going to go any other Ascendency. The projectile, the movement speed, the mark mastery, the Farshot, it's just so good. Now, one thing that I do need to note here. Farshot is going to make our damage feel a bit iffy, a bit varying if we are in a close encounter or if we are near a wall. The way Nimis Farshot Kinetic Blast works is we fire out, so we have a really good damage as we clear the map. And for single target, we also have a really good damage. Even though we are standing on top of the enemy, we fire out, and all the projectiles come back, and they're counted as new projectiles. So as they go out, they have the maximum damage, and as they come in, when they enter us, they have the maximum damage again. This means we have shotgunning, maximum damage with Farshot, even though we're standing on top of the enemy. It is that strong. This is what I mean. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the rest of the tree. Actually, we're going to start with the starting point. We're going to go over the stages of the tree. So quickly going to set it up for the low investment. The way we are going to start off is just the core structure of the tree, which is why it's good to show them as we progress. We want the ballistic node for the projectile speed, damage, and dexterity, because the dexterity gets converted into intelligence. We want charisma, and we want this because we are using offensive and defensive aura, so this gives us a lot of EHP later on, and it gives us a lot of damage as well. Then we need a fertile mind in this position to convert all those dex to int. We need this int node because int is damage and survivability for us. We can use inspired learning here. The best way to set it up is death perception, frantic, infused, and mind drinker. Then we also want Soul Thief because it gives ES on kill and ES and evasion. This node is super good for us. Then we picking up CI and Arcane Sanctuary. Now, for now, this is just spell damage. But that avoidance elemental avoidance and the avoid being stunned is coming in handy later. And we get access to the caster mastery for more spell damage. Then we are grabbing Fusillade and Disintegration for more wand damage, as well as the wand mastery, intelligence as accuracy. This is important early on, later on we can drop this. And Utmost Intellect, of course, we are an int-stacker, combining it with the attribute mastery. Then adding a Watcher's Eye with energy shield gained as energy shield on hit, while we have discipline, instability, and discipline of the forbidden to get the power charge, crit multi, and the power charge damage here. Then finishing the tree over here with energy shield mastery, unnatural calm, and getting the discipline here, and then Prism Reef to get additional projectile and a bit of elemental pen, and a large cluster, which we also can add one on the left later. So this is something we need once, and we can keep all the way. Here we can get Fields of Fury. Now we are not getting any of the attack damage leeches live, but we can get leech somewhere else. And that allows us to have the increased damage and attack speed. So whenever we get hit, we can hit harder back and we can hit faster back. And then we get opportunistic Fusillade for crit and crit damage. As you see, our crit chance right from the get-go is pretty high. So we have almost always the additional damage we get from here. And then we can get 2 medium clusters. Now, surprisingly, pressure point, oh well, that's no surprise. We are critting almost all the time, so 5% or rather 10 because we have 2. Double damage is always good. And then we get precise retaliation. Now, I've been underestimating this node. We have a 25 chance to block. So if we have blocked recently, this is suddenly 60% crit multi with 2 of them. That's a lot of damage. And if we don't have this, we have just more consistent crits. Now, as we are kind of positioning ourselves as a melee build, means that most of the time we are going to get hit. Because of our evasion, because of the armor we have later on, because of the S on hit, we don't mind getting hit, but it means we're going to block fairly consistently, and in 4 seconds, blocking 1 in 4 attacks is doable. And that gives us a crit multi. And with that, we have now a pretty good damage in the map. And as we upgrade the tree, we are going to do some improvements. We're going to pick up more stats, and we're going to pick up a second cluster. Now with the cluster here, we can use the same one up there. You can do an in-between upgrade, because the next big upgrade would be a cluster like this. So you could maybe get this one a bit early and then keep one of the 8 passive ones, or you could get a second 8 passive temporarily. But with this upgrade, we have now something really good. This one gives us everything. Energy shield, damage, more energy shield, elemental resistance, and more damage. Just a small note of this. At the current PoB would be 2% damage. On a high investment, it is about 1 to 2. No, wait, 2% damage, 1% hit pool. That was it. So this cluster is a perfect point sync in between getting the specific upgrade points. And the medium clusters we keep. And of course, I forgot to mention split personalities. Energy shield and ES intelligence. It gives us so much EHP and so much damage. It is better than any rare jewel we can get. It's really powerful. As we upgrade the tree, there are some additions we're going to grab. Of course, we are going to grab influence, so we can fit our very specific aura setup. We can pick up ghost dance to get a bit more survivability. And we can pick up elder power, especially with those small nodes for the crit multi. And as we upgrade further, we can improve the tree a bit more. We can get either power charge and critic strikes with wand when we want to do bosses, or we can keep the elder power. If you are not level 100, you could choose between either. We are going to skip out of these nodes because we're going to do an upgrade over here. Instead of getting Mind Trinker, we are going to grab Resourcefulness. And then 3 points. Up here, those 3 points are decent, giving us 11 points of overall damage. We can spend them here to get 14 points of overall damage, because cold-hearted calculating gives us damage and intelligence. And then we have assassination, which gives us crit multi and crit chance. So this is a very efficient passing, and it's the best tree I can up with. Now, of course, I might have missed something. If there's any improvement I can make on this tree, please tell me, and I'm going to update the PoB quickly. But before we end on the tree, there are 2 last things. On our rare jewels, you can either use intelligence, crit multi ES jewel, or you could use an abyss jewel with flat lightning / flat cold damage to wands, and then flat energy shield and flat intelligence. And on the highest version of the build, highest investment version, we can also pick up inverterate, and combining it with our gear, we're going to be spell suppression capped. Now that much for the tree, which now gets us to the item section. I want to keep the skills for last because there are some interesting interactions we can do. But for now, we are going to start with a low investment, and we are starting to stay as cheap as possible on this. This is a classical int-stacker. We're going to take a wand, and we're going to have a shaper and an elder, or a elder and a hunter. One with the spell damage per intelligence, other with flat lightning damage per intelligence, multi-modded. If we have any open suffix, we can do prefix can be changed, scour, multi-mod, the wand is done for now, and later on we can improve upon this. The shield can be any Aziris reflection, preferable with high intelligence roll and high energy shield roll, as well as a decent resistance roll. For the helm, we have any Crown of the Eyes you can get for enchantment already at this point, or you can skip it for now. Crown of Eyes is very cheap, and even with enchantment isn't that expensive. The body armor, we need any Crusader base, preferable Vol Regalia, and then we're going to Essence spam it to get intelligence and percentage intelligence. Later on you can Fossil or Essence spam it to get a better tier ones, but for now any with decent ES is good enough. The gloves should have resistances and energy shield, as well of course intelligence. This is a good candidate for buy it. It's usually cheaper to buy than to craft those, because we want 3 decent suffixes with an open prefix, but as we are a bit later into the league, those 3 decent suffixes shouldn't be that expensive anymore. For the boots, it's literally the same. Intelligence, double resistances, and a decent movement speed, and then craft ES. The amulet, we can again awaken orb. Awaken orbs are super cheap this league. Take an amulet, anoint it with tranquility. Early on we need dexterity and intelligence base, so a turquoise one. Later on we can upgrade to a lapis for pure int. Get it attributes from Crusader and intelligence from Shaper, Awakener Orbit, and craft ES if you have an open prefix. Again, this is something we can upgrade on this base later on. Then we bought a Call of the Brotherhood. Now I did mention there is a pure lightning variant that is not going to use Call of the Brotherhood. You can use that, but from my testing, from my experience, if we take let's make it with a high investment to make it best. So this is Trinity on a high investment. We have 19 million damage on the tree, on the items. If we swap in a synthesized ring and we switch to this, we only at 18. So we have a bit more damage with the Trinity variant, with the cold damage, than if we have pure lightning. Interesting, but yeah, that's what I figured out. So that's what I'm going to recommend. But anyway, low version. Call of the Brotherhood, any roll on most of stuff, decent int roll, but we want to have the elemental modifiers to convert 48% of our lightning damage to cold. And then we have the other ring can be a synthesized int ring. We want intelligence and we want resistances, so we can cap our resistances on this. And then we can use the prefix to craft mana cost, which we need early on to keep our manas, to keep our skills to be able to use mana. Early on it's going to cost us 12 mana per cast. We have about 20 to 40 based on the version of the tree we're currently running. So we need to have our region and our leech and the cost to add up to a point where we can consistently use it. And then we have our belt, which again can be a synthesized belt early on. We're going to use the Essence of Spite, getting it another int roll as we cannot roll that otherwise. Then resistances and craft prefix for more armor and energy shield to have more survivability. Early on, the flasks. To get our mana on a stable point and be able to use our skill properly, we want a diamond flask, getting charges on a crit, and craft mana cost on it. This should be at least while mapping up all the time because of all the attacks we do, of all the crits we do. And the other flasks can also be getting flask charge and crit, but don't have to be a surgeon, don't have to be as high roll as possible. And then have evasion, bleed immunity, and crit chance, being preferable a jade, quicksilver, and a silver flask for maximized defenses and speed. And our last flask is the Dying Sun. Now I've already shown the power of additional projectiles, and having 2 additional projectiles on top of additional AoE when we hit a rare unique, so for example when starting a legion or when clearing an abyss, clearing a breach, it's giving us the additional damage and also going to be the additional damage when we fight a boss. So we have it not on full because we don't really need it when we just clear small stuff, but we want to have it when we are fighting something big, and usually something big also includes a rare or a unique. And then we get to the mid investment. On the mid investment, we are upgrading the following. We are going to upgrade our wand to its final version because this is one of the biggest damage improvements. We want to do a suffix prefix can be changed and a veiled Iceling Slam. Now this should result in one of the following. We're going to get a prefix and we're going to get lucky elemental penetration, unveil. Or we hope to get a suffix. We're going to craft, I think it was attack speed. And then hope to get strength and intelligence as well as crit chance unveil on it. And then we're going to multi-mod elemental pen and attack speed. This wand is going to keep us for the rest of the game, and it should cost us not too much more. Now if you get an unveil you cannot fix anymore, like for example a prefix veil, you can sell it and start anew. Again, Awaken Orbs are super cheap this league. The shield stays the same. Our helmet should now get an enchantment. Also, we can start looking for a corrupted implicit. You can actually buy these, or at least I was able to buy it for a few divines, so it is achievable this league. Surprisingly, it wasn't as expensive as some other helmet. If you can get this, you don't need it on a medium investment yet, but you won't be able to use determination on the high investment version if you can't get that implicit. Of course, if you don't want determination, if you want more offensive focus, you can also consider getting one with maximum power charge, which will give us a bit more damage. But personally, I like my defenses, so I'm going to go with that. The body armor is going to be the same. Of course, you can get higher rolls, better rolls on this, but for now can stay the same. The gloves can stay the same. The boots can stay the same. The amulet we are going to improve further. We assume we had an open suffix from the last Awakener orb, so we can do suffix can be changed and a reforged crit, which will result in a random roll of crit multi or crit chance, but I think most of the time it's going to be crit multi based on odds. So then we have an amulet with double stats and crit multi, and then we can craft our ES again. So now we have an amulet that is one step further improved. Now, of course, you can also take a new base, and you can then stay on the int base if the other one wasn't good enough, or you were still on the dex int base. And then we can upgrade our Call of the Brotherhood now to be one with corrupted intelligence percentage and preferable dexterity variant. Now strength also works, but dexterity, we need a very specific strength amount we can get on the tree. The percentage strength is not going to help us with it, but the percentage dexterity is going to help us overall. And then the big upgrade of this, we want the Nimis. With this, we are now a Nimis build. We no longer need power siphon, so we can swap to just having a 6-link kinetic blast. And we're going to stick a while longer with the synthesized belt and the same flask setup. And then, once we have farmed up our mage blood, we can swap to the high investment version. The big changes here is the mage blood, because with the mage blood, we can get one flask with the elemental resistance suffix, and we can have a quartz flask with 68 to 70% increased effectiveness. And then getting a T30, a 13% suppression damage, a suppress roll on gloves and boots, and a 8% on gloves implicit to get exactly 100 spell suppression. On top of that, because now we don't need the resistances on the boots anymore, we can get on our boots, there they are. We can get on our boots with the essence elemental avoidance. We need a 31 roll and then a 20% of elemental avoidance, or we can get a 35 roll and a 15% a chance to elemental avoid on the implicit. Combining it with elemental void craft in the chest to be the perfect 100% avoidance chance. So now we have 100% spell suppression, 100% avoidance, are still fully elemental resistance capped, all thanks to the big swap from Mage Blood. Now again, of course, very expensive, but I mean, what else are we going to spend all the money on? The rest of the gear is almost perfect anyway. You can see the body armor improved a bit further with now being actual, a max roll of the essence, and then a better roll on the int. You can improve this even further if you want to, but we aren't really getting much from the additional int level. So if we take a look here, getting a level of kinetic blast gives us not a whole lot of damage. Getting additional level on Trinity is not giving us anything. Giving us an additional level on crit damage is also not giving us anything, and we're not even using it. So overall, getting that elevated will only give you a tiny bit more percentage ES and not the +1 level, because it not does anything for us. But that is basically anything, except, of course, there's one last thing we want to do. We want to upgrade our amulet even further. Now, on the last stage, we got crit multi on it. Now we want to do suffix can be changed and exalt slam it. And then suffix can be changed, annul it, and hopefully keep hitting the mod we add and remove until we either hit elemental penetration or increase damage per intelligence. Either of these is going to be fine and going to be a huge damage increase, which is then the final upgrade of the build. And that's pretty much all to the gear section. As for the skills, I'm going to very quickly going over the low budget in here, and then I'm going to swap in-game to show the normal setup that we want to use once we get to the higher level. Now, for the early on, we can't use Kinetic Blast for single target yet, so instead we're going to use Power Siphon. We have a Power Siphon, we use the Call of the Brotherhood, so we can use Trinity. We use Inspiration, Elemental Damage with attacks, damage on full life because we are using CI, we are always in full life, that's 34 more damage, and Barrage support. Because of our Farshot mastery, we are able to hit Barrage from far away, Now it needs a bit of positioning, but it is temporary after all. We are then using only a 4-link kinetic blast with Trinity, Awaken Fog, and Inspiration. Awaken Fog is one of the biggest early purchases we need to do, but it's so good. If you cannot afford this, you can use Spears instead, but your clear is going to suffer dramatically from it. I would not swap to this, or I would not start with the int version, the classical int-stacker, or at all with this build if you cannot get an Awakened Fork, because the quality of life you lose from not having this is so much. I can't play without Awakened Fork, I'll be honest here. Now, as for our auras, early on we want to use Discipline, having the wall version for a safety button, and then Grace and Wrath. Then we use Shield Charge with faster attacks and a Flame Dash. For our mobility, Shield Charge we can currently only use at level 10. Then we have a level 1 cast more damage taken combined with a Molten Shell, preferable anomalous with quality. This is fairly cheap, so we can pick that early. And a level 1 Hydrosphere, so when something hits us, we apply exposure to them. Then we have a Sniper's Mark on hit. And we have a Frenzy. Now, I know Frenzy is a bit inconvenient for some. It's something we need to press for every like 8 to 10 seconds. But it is worth it. It's the best way we can get frenzy charges on the int-stacker variant, as we don't have access to the node on the tree down here, which the Omni version uses. That gives them free charges, or the Mastery here that gives them free frenzy charges. We are up here, we don't have access to it, so we're going to use frenzy. But I mean, every 10 seconds pressing it with all the attack speed we have, it isn't really that much of a pain. I can even show it in-game in a moment, which we get to now. Now again, for the pure lightning, the only difference is we swap Trinity for Awakened Lightning Pen, getting the chance for lightning exposure and the lightning pen here, and then swapping the ring. Now we get to the in-game part, to the final part. Now, please, game, thanks. Our setup is, in my opinion, for the final one, very interesting. It is almost the same. We are having still Flame Dash and Shield Charge. We are dropping the additional attack speed, but honestly, I need to zoom out for that. Even without, this is very quick, and in a map we have Rage, we have Frenzy Charges, we have Gale Wind. It is not noticeable. We are very, very quickly. Then we have our improved Aura setup. Instead of just using Discipline, Wrath, and Grace, we are now using an Enlightened level 3 combined in the helmet with the 90% cost and reservation multiplier, having access to Grace, Determination, and Discipline, then having a Precision and a Defiance banner on top. And I have everything reserved, as you can see. It's just really powerful in that. And you can see the Wrath here. We are utilizing Anomalous Wrath, or you can also use the 21 Wrath. The 21 is actually better, but Anomalous sounds cooler. Then a Divergent Divine Blessing and a Divergent Inspiration combined with this Flaskcraft gets it to a cost down to about 30. So we can just use this. And because of all our region, the only moment we are running out of mana for like a second or half a second is when we are using it and also hitting an enemy and using Sniper's Mark. So in that combination, we are suddenly down to 20 mana and maybe can't use the Wrath for a moment because of the overstack. It's then disabled, so we just reactivate it. So we have two buttons. We need to press like every 8 to 10 seconds. As you can see, it has a 10-second duration. So we press this like for a moment, press this for a moment, and then we continue attacking. Then we have our customer damage taken setup. I'm still using it exactly as in the PoB. And we have lastly a haste, which is the one I needed the extra space for, which is why we can't use faster attacks anymore. So now we have a haste, a wall haste instead, which I'm using in a map. And also while looting, I can use a normal haste instead of wrath, so I can move a bit faster. It's a tiny bit quality of life. And then we get to the main setup. Now, of course, we have Kinetic Blast, preferable with Divergence, so we have more AoE after forking, which means more explosions. Then we have the Trinity support. We have the Inspiration support. Now, as far as quality goes, Divergent is the best one, as we have the easiest time keeping the mana up. you can make it somewhat work without the Virgin. However, this means that if you're sometimes not hitting something, you can run out of mana. With this, we can not run out of mana normally when we don't hit something. If we don't have it, we rely on the mana regeneration of our helm to keep counteracting the a bit increased mana cost. And lastly, we have elemental damage with attacks, awakened of course, so we have the immunity to elemental reflect, and then we have awakened fork, and now greater volley. Now this comes likely as a surprise to some who don't know the difference. I have a level 1 greater volley here and a level 1 GMP. As you can see, they are both for projectiles. If I fire a volley, you see that, or you can kind of see that here and here, here and here is the starting point of the projectiles, but they fly back to me. So for Nimis builds, greater volley is the exact same as GMP. As you can see, the only difference is the starting point. In GMP, all 5 start from me. With volley, they start in a line, but they still act the complete same. Now, of course, Awaken GMP would be the better version. It's another projectile, but if you don't have access to it because of the price, you can just use a normal one, and the difference is following. Level 1 is 35 less damage, and this is 30 less damage. This goes down to 20 less, and as far as I know, normal GMP goes down to 21 or 22. Let's see. 26 actually. So on the normal one, we have 6% more damage just by using greater volley instead of GMP. And if we use Awakened GMP, we have only 1% less damage than a level 21 greater volley. So I say this is a good change, a good swap in for GMP until we have greater GMP. And that's basically everything. I guess the only last thing I can mention is, on mark on hit, you can also use alternate quality to make them take increased damage, but that's not really needed. And this video honestly been long enough. So the last thing I'm going to show is one quick map, because it's fun, because it's enjoyable, and it's really nice to look at. And I also can show that there isn't really any downside in having to press these buttons for a moment. So we're going to take a classical Legion Harbinger Dunes map, and we're going to see just how wonderful this clears. So I'm going to start with this, just activating it here already at 4, and now I can just start destroying things. Activate haste. And now you can see already, shield charge is almost instant. Clearing stuff here, clearing stuff there. Destroying everything. There's a Legion. So on a Legion, just stand still for a moment. Activate everything. Go to one end. Clear the rest. Go to the other end. Clear the rest. Now this is not a double life Legion. I've done double life Legions before. Wonderful. The moment I try to show this, there's one enemy remaining somewhere. I mean, we have more tries. I can show you that it's not always like this. But here, let's take a look at the boss. Look how quickly he dies. And he's gone. So we can go up. And another one down. So we have another Legion. Oh, even America's one. Just, I don't know how else to describe this as. This clear is awesome. There, this ended early. Aw. Could have been. Look how quickly they die now that we have the buffs up. I didn't forget about her. I'm going to go back in a moment. But of course we want to be as quick as possible with the map, so we're going to try to be fast. Oh, I got... Now, this is what I meant with inspired learning. I got Soul Eater for a moment. So now my attack speed goes even more crazy. Shield charge almost sets me back. This is just... this build, it makes just so much fun. And we are about to be done with the map. Took a bit longer because of the one legion, but we're going to clear the boss here. And then the map boss. And the map boss died, so we're going to finish the Harbinger. And with that, map is done, video is done. Hopefully it was enjoyable. And with all that being said, hopefully I'm going to see you either in the next video or whenever. Have a wonderful day and goodbye.